Welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to dive into the unbelievably resilient, absurdly action-packed, and completely historically accurate medical chart of Adrian Carton Duarte. Let's just jump right into this because if you were to invent a fictional action hero with this guy's resume, audiences would probably tell you it's entirely unrealistic. I mean, we are looking at a man whose life is a breathtaking highlight reel of early 20th century warfare, wrapped in an almost comical disregard for his own physical safety.
Seriously, what kind of person survives being shot in the face, the skull, the stomach, the ankle, the leg, the hip, and the ear, and then actually has the audacity to say he enjoyed it? It's wild. To understand how someone could survive such a staggering, almost cartoonish list of injuries, we have to look at the sheer enthusiastic willpower of a man who simply refused to let peacetime slow him down. He is the ultimate case study in human resilience.
All right, let's start with part one. An eager young soldier.
Our escalating chronology begins in 1880. Adrian was born into an aristocratic Belgian family in Brussels. His father was a powerful lawyer and a diplomat, and the expectation was that Adrian would just follow in his footsteps, live a very quiet, comfortable life of academia and high society. But his expected path heavily clashed with his chosen path. His father sent him to a prestigious boarding school in Oxford to study law and make him proud. While at school, though, Adrian started reading about war. And to him, it sounded absolutely amazing. So amazing, in fact, that despite his father's wishes, he immediately sought out the mud, the barbed wire, and the explosions of the Second Boer War in South Africa.
When that war broke out, Adrian was just 19 years old. Now, the problem was the British enlistment age requirement was 20, and he wasn't even technically British yet. So what did he do? He just bypassed the rules. He made up the name Trooper Carton, claimed he was 25, and submitted his application, basically figuring if the British didn't take him, he'd just go fight for the Boers instead. Well, the British didn't run a background check, and just like that, he was off to war.
Once he actually got to South Africa, he definitely found the intensity he was looking for. He noticed enemy barbed wire preventing his allies from advancing, so he marched right up to his colonel and asked for permission to run up and literally move it out of the way with his bare hands. His colonel called him a fool and denied the request. But Adrian's eagerness couldn't be contained, and he soon found out exactly why the colonel called him a fool. He was hit by Boer snipers, taking bullets to the stomach and the groin. These major injuries sent him straight to the medics, who promptly discovered his real identity and shipped him right back to Oxford.
Which brings us to part two, the Great War's toll. So after healing up from his initial wounds, his Oxford classmates treated him like a total hero. But Adrian? He was just depressed that his war experience lacked glory. He ended up staying in the British Army, spent an incredibly boring 8-year stint in India getting jacked and hunting, and finally became a British citizen in 1914, just in time for a running tally of missing body parts to really begin. On his way to fight in British Somaliland, super excited to ride a camel and fight the so-called Mad Mullah, he ended up sneaking so close to the enemy that he could physically touch them with his walking stick. They opened fire and he got shot twice in the face, losing his eye and taking a hit to the ear. He was shipped back, but then immediately transferred to France for the Great War. There, an enemy trap led to his hand being completely shot through. His fingers were left hanging by just skin, and his newly purchased wristwatch was blown to bits and embedded in his arm. After surgeons tried and failed to save the hand for years, he eventually just told them to cut it off.
But actually, let's rewind just a second to the loss of his eye, because this detail is just too good to skip. The military didn't want a one-eyed man heading to the European front lines. They thought it would make the army look weak, so they forced him to sign papers agreeing to wear a glass eye before they would even deploy him. He agreed, got the glass eye, and on his taxi ride home, he simply popped it out, tossed it out the window of the moving vehicle, and strapped on a black eye patch instead. You can't make this stuff up. So now, missing an eye and sporting a newly mangled hand, he next found himself leading a charge at the Battle of the Somme. To put this into perspective, this was a staggering, brutal offensive, where over 1 million soldiers would lose their lives. And there was Adrian, right in the thick of it, firing at the enemy, encouraging his troops, and literally pulling grenade pins with his teeth because he only had one good hand.
His compounding survival built incredibly fast. At the Somme in July of 1916, he was suddenly knocked down. He checked his hand, his eye, his head, and realized a machine gun bullet had literally blown off the back of his skull. But miraculously, it missed all the vital parts. He spent 3 weeks in the hospital, won the prestigious Victoria Cross, and immediately went right back out. Later in 1916 at Passchendaele, artillery fire blew the clothes right off him and severely injured his hip.
In 1917 at Cambrai, he was shot in the leg and nearly lost it. And then at Arras, he got shot in his other ear. It was just relentless.
The dark irony of his life was inescapable. Picture this. During one of his many hospital stays, he was lying on a stretcher with a sour face, totally annoyed that he was sidelined again. A clergyman walked by, noticed his eye patch, and tried to comfort him, saying, "Cheer up, it could have been much worse. A few months ago, I saw a man come through here who was missing both an eye and an arm." That clergyman was completely unaware he was speaking to General Carton-Douillard himself. His own horrific, legendary reputation actually preceded him to his own hospital bed.
Moving right along to Part 3, Chaos in Interwar Poland.
Peace was simply not in this man's vocabulary. When the Great War finally ended, Adrian found life in England entirely too boring. So, naturally, he moved to Poland, a country where literally all of its neighbors were actively trying to destroy it at the time. It was exactly the environment he thrived in. There, he fought against the Soviets, the Ukrainians, the Lithuanians, and the Czechs. He tried air travel and survived an airplane crash. He then decided trains might be safer for his next diplomatic mission. But nope, his train was attacked by Cossacks. Adrian ended up hanging off the back of the moving train, firing his weapon, falling off, scrambling back on, and just continuing to shoot until the attackers disappeared. Just exactly the kind of chaos he was hoping for.
Next up is Part 4, World War II Captivity.
So Adrian actually got a brief taste of peace for a while. He enjoyed a 16-year retirement in Poland, hunting every single day. Life was good. But then Europe plunged into another massive conflict. Both the Soviets and the Germans invaded Poland, and Adrian barely made it out alive, pulling our unkillable soldier right back into the global fray. At 60 years of age, an era when most men are well into their twilight years, enjoying quiet evenings, Adrian made it back to Britain, was handed his old rank, and was immediately deployed to fight the Germans in Norway. Following a brutal campaign in Norway where the Allies were taking heavy losses, he was recalled and selected for a special diplomatic mission to Yugoslavia. He boarded a plane in Cairo, hoping it wouldn't crash like his last one. Well, spoiler alert, it crashed. The plane went down off the coast of Italian-controlled Libya. Adrian swam to shore, was quickly identified as a highly valuable prisoner, and was shipped off to Italy, beginning a 3-year stint in captivity.
But, of course, he didn't just sit quietly. He attempted to escape the high-security POW camp 5 separate times, successfully breaking out on his final attempt. And you really have to appreciate the absolute absurdity of this next part. He spent 8 days wandering northern Italy disguised as an Italian peasant. Keep in mind, this man spoke zero Italian, wore a highly recognizable black eye patch, and was visibly missing a hand. A master of disguise he was not. So, predictably, he was eventually recaptured. And finally, Part 5, Diplomacy and Final Retirement.
Eventually, Italy wanted out of the war and used Adrian as a bargaining chip with the British. They even offered to dress him in a fine Italian suit for the handover. Ever the character, Adrian told his captors he wouldn't object to free clothes as long as they didn't make him look like a gigolo. Shortly after getting back to Britain, his good friend Winston Churchill had another job for him, sending him on a special diplomatic mission to China. He flew there, without crashing this time, amazingly, and quickly took a liking to the people. But he was never one to hold his tongue. During a formal dinner, he notoriously interrupted Mao Zedong mid-speech. He boldly told the communist leader that he was completely wrong and that he needed to stop yapping and spend more time attacking the Japanese. Mao was so startled by the sheer audacity of this one-eyed, one-handed British veteran that he just stopped and laughed.
In the ultimate grand stroke of irony, after Japan surrendered in 1945, Adrian finally retired for good at age 67. On his way back home, he stopped in French Indochina, and get this, after surviving the Boer War, Somaliland, World War I, the Polish conflicts, World War II, plane crashes, and POW camps, he slipped on a rogue coconut mat. He fell, broke several ribs, and knocked himself entirely unconscious. He survived, but dying by a coconut mat would have been a profoundly terrible way to go, considering literally everything else he had walked away from.
He finally made it home to Ireland, spent his remaining days in peace, and passed away quietly at the grand old age of 83. He left us with a memoir, and in it, there's this shockingly understated quote about the gruesome horrors of the Great War. He wrote, "Frankly, I enjoyed the war." It's baffling, right? But it perfectly summarizes his unyielding approach to human conflict.
Which brings us to our final takeaway today. If a man can endure a lifetime of catastrophic ballistic trauma, lose an eye, a hand, take bullets to the skull, the stomach, and his limbs,
and still look back on the horrors of trench warfare with genuine fondness, what does that actually tell us about the bizarre extremes of the human condition? It really leaves us to wonder just how unbelievably malleable human resilience is. And honestly, it makes you ask, what limits are you placing on yourself today? Think about that for a second. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.